So can you just tell us a little bit about where you're from and the story of Syria?
Well, where I'm from Damascus. I'm from the old city. My family line comes all the way from the old town. You see, Damascus has the old city of Damascus, and you have the larger vicinity of Damascus. Talking about the conflict started in almost more than 2 years ago, in March. It started in a town called Dara. It's it's a bit far from Damascus, and yeah. Do you want me to talk more about that?
Well, I mean, Kari was telling us a little bit about your situation, how you applied for asylum, right? Uh, is that correct? Not to go back to Syria?
Well, tomorrow I'm going to the police to apply for asylum. I was here for my master's. I was here. I mean, I came to do a master's and I stayed for a year now. And right now, I have no other option than applying for asylum.
What about your family is all in Syria? And what do you hear from them about the situation? What is life like in Syria?
Well, right now, my dad is in Syria. The rest of my family are all outside Syria. Um, you see, we live in a house that is inside Damascus, but it's closer to the mountain area. In the mountain area, that's where the cannons are situated. And when I was there more than a year ago, the situation was already bad. It was already dangerous, and you can still hear the cannons. Like I would wake up in the morning on the sound of the cannons that are shooting from behind of our house. And right now the situation is almost the same, but with more explosions and with less security.
And could you perhaps tell us your perspective about? I'm sure you're staying up to date with the news as we are, and there's different stories. And what would be your opinion or your perspective of the Assad regime, and then as well as the foreign international actors?
Okay, well, it all comes back to the beginning of the crisis. Before the crisis, the government already knew that there was a problem in the awareness of the people in Syria. People from the large cities as Damascus or Aleppo are more aware of what was happening all around the world than people from outside those cities. They were lacking awareness. This lack of awareness, that's what got us to this point. Because this point now, some people are with the government, some people are against the government. But it's kind of like if you're, I mean, I know it's a bad example, but if you're with Barcelona or Madrid, some people fight for that. Some people actually fight with their bare hands for that cause. And now people are killing each other for just either being with the regime or against the regime. To me, as a Syrian person, and to my friends, we honestly don't care if the regime stays there or if it doesn't. All we care about is to live, to eat, and to be safe.
So I mean, it's kind of like us here in Mexico, no? Because we have the narco violence, and we don't care
Yeah,
whoever's in power as long as we can go about our daily business safely.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so what do you think personally of, or your opinion, or people that you know, what's their opinion of the Assad regime? Is he really this um, cruel dictator that killed 100,000 people? Because we have a hard time, they tell us all these things on the news, but we can't necessarily believe um, everything. So, what do you think about how would you paint Assad?
Well, Assad is just a front for the full regime. Assad, as a person, he was educated in the UK. He has a medicine degree. He was exposed to how the world is working. But while we were in Syria, we were never able to say anything bad about the regime. We would be arrested. If we were to say anything about the regime, we would be taken, we would be arrested, and probably we would be in prison maybe until now. But okay, in order to change that, there was like a democratic movement by the people. That's when it started. People were upset for for uh, for the regime torturing children. I don't know if you are familiar with the story that sparked all of this. When
No, maybe you can remind us.
okay, well, there were some children in Durham. They wrote on the school walls something against the regime, and they were taken. They were 12 years old. They were taken to for interrogation by the national security. There were six children, and so they were interrogated, tortured, and they were killed. When their parents asked for them, they went to ask for them, and the answer was, "You can make other babies. Your children are not going to come get back to you. You can make others, and if you can't, you can bring us your wives, and we would make them for you." So that sparked a move against the regime. That's when the demonstration started. When the demonstration started, they were being shot at, and then the killing started, and the revenge chain started.
So we can clearly see that Assad is not a nice guy. I just want to remind students, if you guys have any questions, just come on up and ask. And so, looking on the other side of the perspective, how would you view, let's say, the intervention of foreign interests such as the United States or Russia? How do you see them?
I can tell you about my view and my friends who live right now in Syria, whom I communicate with on a daily basis. They don't really care. It's just one more bomb. It's just one more rocket that would come down. It's not going to make a difference because every day and constantly, like if I would be talking to my dad right now, every 2 minutes I would hear the sounds of explosions and the sounds of rockets being launched and being and the explosion of those rockets. So it doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is the places that they are going to target. If they are going to target civilian places, like places surrounded with civilians, like my dad, he lives in an area where scientists who work at the government research facility center. That's our neighborhood. It's all for those scientists, and it's surrounded by military points. So probably if the U.S. intervention would happen, it would make it more dangerous for my dad. And but to other people around the city, it would be just one more explosion.
And this course, we focus more on American foreign policy, and just looking at what has happened with prior interventions, like Libya, for example. Libya is in total chaos right now, and I mean, I would think that wouldn't it, just as you mentioned, that your neighborhood where your father lives would be probably destroyed, and
Yeah.
I mean, if there was foreign intervention, it would probably look like Libya, and I don't think, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think that's what I would want as a Syrian citizen because it would just bring total chaos. What do you think?
I told you that it would be dangerous for my dad, but let's say my friend's view is that okay, let it happen as long as it would end the conflict in Syria, because the conflict is not going anywhere. Both sides are being fed with weaponry, with financial aid from different parts. The government is being supported by Russia, Iran, China, and the rebels are being supported by the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. So it's endless. We don't see an end to the conflict right now.
And you mentioned this alliance of Russia, Iran, and China. A lot of people say that if Syria is invaded by the U.S. and its allies, that it could lead to a third world war. I mean, do people in Syria talk about that, or
We talked about that since the beginning of the crisis. Actually, when I was in Syria and I was with my friends, we were talking about that, and we were saying that this is the beginning of World War III. But I mean, we were just saying that as a casually. We never imagined that it would get to this point. Syria
and
is the stepping point for Russia. There is a military base, a Russian military base in Latakia, which is one of the Syrian cities, and it's essential for Russia because Russia is providing gas to the European Union. I don't know if you are familiar with the story about the gas pipelines that are coming from Qatar through Syria, and Syria is refusing to continue with those pipelines.
right? Yeah, well, we know about that. Well, one perspective I have is that I think it seems with Libya, we just had a reading today from international law professor called Francis Boyle, and he mentioned one reason that Russia and China let the U.S. Attack and invade Libya was, they view it as a chess game. They thought that it would use up more resources of the Americans, and it would give more time to Russia and China, where Russia would protect Syria. But now it seems that the U.S. is moving on to Syria, and do you think that Russia would finally react and attack the U.S. if they went into Syria, or would they not react and they would wait until Iran perhaps was attacked or they themselves were attacked?
I,
Have you
I
thought
think they
about that?
would. I think they would do that indirectly. If the U.S. would attack, and if they were to react, they would do that indirectly through missiles coming out of Syria, not coming out of Russia. They would put the blame on the Syrian regime if they were to do anything. That would be the smartest thing to do. But
And
I don't see that the U.S. is gonna attack anytime soon now.
so it's just a lot of talk.
Right now, it's a lot of talk. Although they did move their fleet close to Syria, but there's also the Russian fleet over there. And they have been there for quite a while now, for almost a year now. So it doesn't indicate that anything is going to happen anytime soon.
Okay, we have a question here from your old friend.
Emily, how are you?
Great. I was well, I didn't have the chance to ask you this before, but we were wondering, well, I was wondering, who do you think is the person who's behind the chemical weapon attacks? Because we were told that Assad was the guilty one, but we were wondering if there is a third part or if there is like a West conspiracy against Syria to being able to legitimate and then strike Syria, or what do you think about it?
Um, I think just the way I thought about every other explosion that happened in Syria, and it's never you can never know who did that. You can never know. And neither the regime nor the rebels. It could be a third party that just wants the conflict to go on and to continue. We honestly do not know. And although the people who died are citizens, and they are not military personnel, that doesn't mean that the regime made that. I'm not pro-government. I honestly, as a personal opinion, I don't like the Assad regime. I hope that it never stays there, and I hope it changes, but not to the Islamic rebels either.
And do you think that Vladimir Putin's position has to do directly with the Tartus port on Syria? Do you think that's the underlying objective that he's trying to protect, or what do you think about that?
I mean, he's supporting the Assad regime in any way he could. Even in the way he is communicating with the U.S., he's supporting the Assad regime. I think he would keep backing the Assad regime until the last point. It's in their interest in the Middle East.
You mentioned the religious atmosphere, but I have a question about that. That you obviously don't want the Islamic rebels to come in, and we've seen videos. It's up there on YouTube. They're cutting off heads and eating. I'm sure you saw the video of one of the rebels eating the part of the
The
corpse of
blood.
a Syrian soldier. Can you
Yeah.
just tell us briefly, like before the conflict, it seemed there was at least some security and peace, and the different religions got together. But now we have these Islamic radicals who are just going to, I mean, rip the country to shreds if they get their way.
Yeah, it's just as I said in the beginning, that it's about the awareness of the people. You see, when Assad took over the government, he had two development lines. One is the economic development, and the other is the social development. And he proceeded with the economic development, but he neglected the social development. So the people's awareness was really getting into critical levels. I heard the story about the people's awareness when during the Japanese tsunami, and that is way before the Syrian crisis. I heard it from a person who is inside the presidential palace, and he was advising one of my relatives to leave the country. He was saying that things are going to be bad in the country. So the government saw that coming because people were unaware. And when we're talking about the rebels eating hearts, that's not the worst thing that happened so far, and not only from the rebels, from both parts. And the things that are put on YouTube are as much controlled as the media right now, as Al Jazeera or any other kind of media. They are also like trying to put the people to hate other people. But all in all, before the crisis, yes, people were living peacefully. There were lots of sects in Damascus, let's say, or the Damascus area. All of the sects were living together, and there was no problems at all. Like you could go out from 2 a.m. till 7 a.m. and you could just be walking around the city, and no one would bother you. No one would you would be completely safe. Yeah, but so right now it's really dangerous. I don't know. I think I went away from the question, from the answer to your question. So
That's
tell me. Yeah.
no, that's fine. I have an Iranian friend that I studied with, and he told me a few years ago that his parents who live in Iran were actually shopping for a home outside of Iran because they were afraid of a conflict like Syria coming to Iran. Obviously, that's right now it's not an urgency, but I mean, if you're not returning to Syria, it seems like this civil war will probably go on for, unfortunately, a long time. It doesn't seem like there's a short-term solution.
Oh yes, there isn't a short-term solution. That's why my friends who are inside Syria, they were with the military intervention from the U.S. regardless of how small an effect it would make, it would shorten the crisis period. Because looking at things now, Syria would need like 10 more years to get back to its state.
Yeah, it seems that we have a question here.
Sure.
Hi. Um, yeah, you've already sort of touched on this, but I was sort of thinking a lot of the rebels, or at least this is what I've heard, are composed of foreign mercenaries or foreign fighters. And in that regard, I was wondering like where local loyalties lie and what the local opinion is of the rebels.
Yeah, when you're saying a lot of a lot of rebels are foreign, it's that's a little bit wrong because there are lots of people who hate the regime right now. Some of my friends are with the rebels right now, and not all of them are foreigners, but there are lots. I mean, I agree with you that there are some foreign rebels who are affecting the the revolution right now. They're giving it a bad image, like those Islamic extremists. They were non-existent. I mean, okay, they had certain existence in Syria before the crisis, but not as much as right now, and not in those large numbers. We don't know. We as Syrian people, we don't know where they came from. Those Islamic extremists. Trust me, no one likes them in Syria, and I don't know what to tell you. I mean, this is the local opinion of the foreign rebels. This is the local opinion of any foreigner, actually, because there are also some people fighting with the government who are foreigners, who are from Iran, who are from Hezbollah in Lebanon. We don't appreciate any person who is having any who is carrying arms and killing other people in Syria.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
No other questions so far? I'm not sure if you answered this completely, but I mean, we can all pretty much agree, as you mentioned, that Assad is not a nice guy and he should go. But the other option again was the U.S. intervention, and I mean, would you support the U.S. intervention or in any way? Because I think most preferable would be a third way, no, apart from direct U.S. intervention, because it seems like the outcome would be uh, Libya.
Libya, I think that Libya is now much better than Syria right now.
Do you have some friends or news from Libya?
Well,
To,
no, I don't, but I have the according to the statistics and according to the trends now, Damascus is the most dangerous place on earth right now. So I think anything that could happen would make it a better place to live. And I am with the American strike on Syria. It would at least make a certain change. But a strike that is only limited and temporary for 3 days, I don't know what kind of a change that it would make. It might balance the forces between the rebels and the government, which would prolong the crisis more. I don't know. I mean, the best solution, if anyone is going to intervene, it would be a wide scale intervention. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense.
okay, and I guess well, any final thoughts for us who are not Syrians but concerned about the situation in Syria? What would you? Any final thoughts to tell us about the
I could tell
situation?
you that Syrian people appreciate attention, and I appreciate this so much that people are thinking about Syria. When I first came to Europe, everyone was so far away from everything bad that was happening in Syria. But when I hear that people are studying this and discussing this, I feel appreciated. And trust me, I mean, even this, our Skype conversation, my friends were happy about that. My friends in Syria were happy about that. That people are caring about what is going on in Syria, because it's not only 100,000 people that are dead. Trust me, the numbers are a lot more than that. I don't have an exact number, but the 100,000, those are just the registered ones. There are lots of missing people. One of my best friends was kidnapped last year, and still we didn't hear about him until now. So yeah, it is bad. And when you see that people are caring about this, we really feel good about that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the shadow of the Yugoslav war 20 years ago, so it's never a pretty thing. Um, any final questions from students? Yeah, one more.
Um, yeah, I'm also interested to know what kind of government you'd like to see, like post war. Um, like whether you'd want democracy or whether maybe if there's a big rise in Islam or Islamism in Syria, then maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know.
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. The kind of government I would prefer is a democratic government that is as far away from religion as possible, because Syria has a diversity of religions. We're not talking only about Islams and Christians and Jews. We're talking about sects within the Islam, and those sects, the way they were living, they won't live that way if it was an Islamic regime, if it was an Islamic government. So people are, I mean, I would say that me, my circle of friends, and the people around me, they are all against the Islamic government, an Islamic government. We're all with having a democratic government that would take each person's opinion into consideration.
Okay. Yeah. No more. Well, I guess another final question related to your answer. We study a lot how Washington goes around the world and they remove regimes and then they install regimes that are pro Washington. Um, and a lot of the times they install dictators that are pro Washington, as we saw with Iran in 1953 when they installed the Shah. Um, and I mean, this goes back to the original point you made. For the people, I guess, ideally we want democracy, like you mentioned, but often, most of the time, we don't get it. But next best thing would be a daily security, right? We can go about our business without worrying, if we're gonna get kidnapped, like we have the problems here in Mexico, obviously to a
Exactly.
much lesser extent. So, I mean, I guess what would happen? How would you feel if you ended up with a pro-Washington dictator? I mean, most people see through what Washington is doing? Like in Egypt right now, they try to install, um, puppet leaders, but then the people they're rising up against that. You don't have that option currently in Syria because of the civil war. But how would you feel with a pro-Washington dictator in a sense, or a puppet?
It would be at least better than Bashar. That, that's the first thing that I would think of. But of course, having a person who is from Syria, who is from Damascus or Aleppo, who understands what the people want and not being a puppet, that would be amazing. But I think that's a dream right now. In the current political situation, there are much greater forces than the force of the Syrian people.
And at least, and if you did have that type of leader, you'd have the chance to revolt and overthrow them. No.
Oh hell yeah!
There are no other final questions. We thank you a lot for your time. I know it's late where you are.
It's okay. Thank you very much for caring about the Syrian cause.
It was very informative, and as most of the students here are international relations students, it's part of all of us as citizens from different countries. We need to care about everything that's happening in the world because indirectly it affects us all, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so hopefully some of us here can be inspired and work to resolve some of these issues. And we hope that the situation in Syria gets better and not as many people die as we've seen in other wars.
I really hope so. I really hope so. Well, thank you very much also for listening to my opinion as well. And I would just remind you a second time that this is my opinion and I'm just having the ideas of my circle of friends and my family. That's it.
Okay. We wish you the best on your studies and your stay, and best of luck in everything.
Okay. Good luck to you
Adios.
too.
To say.
Good, adios. And goodbye, Carrie.